Prepare yourself for a journey into the unknown. In today's video, we're uncovering the chilling stories of two unsolved murders that have baffled investigators for years, and one truly bizarre case of a family's tragic end. First, we'll explore the haunting mystery behind a murder that has gone cold, leaving more questions than answers. Then, we'll delve into another case, where the truth still remains buried in the dark. And finally, we'll uncover the shocking story of the Daub family, where a seemingly peaceful home was torn apart by a shocking event that would leave the world stunned. Stay tuned, because these stories aren't widely covered. However, they are some of the most bizarre cases in recent history. Let's begin. On the surface, Katrina Holmes' story seemed like a dream. A young woman from Sweden, full of life, eager for adventure, and excited to experience America. She had won the equivalent of $1,500 in a lottery and used it to fund her travels, landing in the quiet, affluent town of Dover, Massachusetts, where she worked as an au pair. But behind the carefree nights out and letters home filled with optimism, Katrina carried a dark secret. One she would never get the chance to reveal. On the morning of June 23, 1996, a homeless man searching through a dumpster in Boston's Back Bay made a gruesome discovery. Inside a trash bag lay the upper half of a woman's torso, manicured hands, cleanly severed at the waist. The investigation that followed would unravel a web of secrets, strange coincidences, and chilling possibilities. And nearly 30 years later, Katrina Holmes' murder remains one of Boston's most haunting unsolved crimes. In March of 1996, 20-year-old Katrina set out for America, eager to experience something new. She found a job caring for the children of Frank Rapp, a well-known photographer, and his wife, Susan Nichter, a respected artist. By all accounts, she was happy with the children, but life in the United States wasn't what she had imagined. As the weeks passed, something changed. The once upbeat letters she sent home took on a different tone. To one friend, she wrote, "Something terrible has happened. I cannot tell you right now what it is, but I will tell you when I get home." She never made it home. On June 21, 1996, Katrina and her friends went into Boston to celebrate midsummer. They ended up at Zanzibar, a nightclub near Boston Common. Witnesses recall her being intoxicated, laughing, and carefree, until she was asked to leave around 3:20 a.m. She stepped outside alone. What happened next remains a mystery. A homeless man later reported seeing her in an alleyway, dancing and singing with another homeless man. She was last seen near Tremont Street and Boylston Place, and then she vanished. 2 days later, a man rummaging through a Back Bay dumpster made a discovery so horrific it sent shockwaves through Boston. Inside a heavy trash bag was a human torso. No legs, no lower body. Katrina's remains were shockingly clean. Her body had been washed, and she had been strangled with a rope or cord. But perhaps the most chilling part? Whoever did this had expertly bisected her body, almost surgically, likely using an electric saw. As the investigation unfolded, police began to focus on several suspects. Frank Rapp, Katrina's employer, quickly became a person of interest. Rumors swirled that he and Katrina may have had an inappropriate relationship. Adding to the suspicion, just after Katrina's torso was found, a dumpster near Frank's home was set on fire. Inside, investigators found charred clothing. It wasn't Katrina's, but it raised eyebrows. And then there was the most bizarre coincidence. On the day after Katrina's disappearance, Frank applied for a permit to dump trash at a transfer station in Dover, Massachusetts. Did he dispose of her lower half there? Yet despite this suspicious behavior, police never found enough evidence to charge him. Another person of interest was John Zuiz, frontman of an underground band called Sleep Chamber. His music was dark, filled with themes of bondage and death. He lived just 2 blocks from where Katrina's torso was found. But aside from his eerie persona and proximity to the crime scene, there was no concrete link to Katrina's murder. Then there was Herb Whitten, a local man known for prowling the streets late at night. He was seen speaking with Katrina that evening and had a disturbing habit. He would roam the city at closing time looking for intoxicated women. Police brought him in for questioning multiple times, but in a strange twist, he was ruled out when it was discovered that he had been pulled over for speeding on his way home shortly after Katrina disappeared. 1 year later, Witten died by suicide. One of the most unsettling suspects was Gregory Hummel, a real estate agent arrested in 1996 for kidnapping and attempting to rape a woman outside Zanzibar. He had the means, the opportunity, and a history of violence against women. But once again, authorities never found direct evidence tying him to Katrina's murder. Today, he still works in real estate. One of the biggest obstacles in solving Katrina's murder was the lack of a crime scene. No one knew where she had been killed. Experts theorized that her murderer might have lived in a secluded place, somewhere he could use an electric saw without drawing attention. Others believed she may have been killed in an apartment, her body transported in parts. Then, in 1999, another woman, Delia Mendez, was found bisected in Florida. At first, investigators thought it might be the same killer, but Delia's murder was messier, more brutal. No attempt was made to clean her body. The cases were ultimately deemed unrelated. Decades later, Katrina Holmes' murder remains one of Boston's most infamous unsolved crimes. Theories abound, but no arrests have ever been made. Every year, as Sweden celebrates midsummer, her father visits her grave, wondering what secret she was about to reveal and what really happened that fateful night. Will Katrina ever get justice? One thing is certain, someone out there knows the truth, and they've been keeping a deadly secret for nearly 30 years. Dublin, Ireland, July 11th, 1987. It was a warm summer night, and the city was alive with energy. Concert-goers flooded the streets, still buzzing from the electrifying performance of David Bowie at Slane Castle earlier that evening. Among them was 27-year-old Antoinette Smith, a devoted mother of two, enjoying a rare night out with a friend. For Antoinette, this was supposed to be an evening of music, laughter, and memories. But sometime in the early hours of July 12th, she vanished without a trace. 9 months later, her remains were discovered on a remote mountain in County Wicklow, murdered and left to decompose, and to this day, her killer has never been caught. Antoinette Smith was a 27-year-old woman from Dublin. She was a loving mother to 2 young daughters, Lisa, who was 7, and Rachel, just 4 at the time of her disappearance. By all accounts, Antoinette was a warm, kind-hearted woman, devoted to her family. She was married and lived a relatively quiet life, but like any young woman, she enjoyed the occasional night out with friends. On the evening of July 11th, 1987, she and a close friend attended the David Bowie concert at Slane Castle, an event that drew tens of thousands of people. After the concert, they returned to Dublin by bus, arriving at Parnell Square just before 11 p.m. The night was still young, and the 2 women decided to continue their evening at La Mirage, a popular nightclub on Parnell Street. Inside, they met 2 men, casual acquaintances. The 4 spent the next few hours together, dancing and drinking, until the club closed around 2 a.m. When the group left La Mirage, Antoinette's friend decided to go home. Antoinette, however, remained outside the club, speaking with the 2 men. The 3 of them then walked towards O'Connell Street, a well-known, bustling area of Dublin. At the taxi rank near the Gresham Hotel, the 2 men got into a cab bound for Ballymun, while Antoinette stayed behind. She was last seen walking towards O'Connell Bridge alone. After that, she simply vanished. Her husband reported her missing when she failed to return home. For 9 months, her family endured unimaginable grief, hoping for answers that never came. Then, on April 3, 1988, a discovery was made, one that confirmed their worst fears. Glendew Mountain, a remote, windswept area in the Wicklow Mountains, located near the Lamass Monument, close to Glencree and Enniskerry. It was here, nearly a year after Antoinette's disappearance, that her remains were found. A group of hikers stumbled upon human bones, partially buried and exposed to the elements. It was Antoinette. Due to the condition of her remains, the exact cause of death could not be determined. But authorities were certain of one thing: this was no accident. Antoinette Smith had been murdered. For over 3 decades, investigators have tried to piece together what happened to Antoinette after she was last seen near O'Connell Bridge. Theories have emerged, but no one has ever been charged. One prevailing theory suggests that Antoinette may have accepted a lift from someone she knew or someone who offered her a ride. Could it have been an acquaintance from the nightclub? A stranger who saw her walking alone? Or was she targeted by someone who had been watching her that night? Another theory involves the 2 men she was last seen with. While they took a taxi home, some believe they may have information they never shared. Did Antoinette confide in someone that night? Did an unknown individual take advantage of her vulnerability? Then there's the location of her body. Glendew Mountain. This remote, isolated spot is not somewhere a random attacker would likely choose on impulse. The person responsible knew where they were going. This suggests premeditation, or at the very least, someone familiar with the area. Yet, after 37 years, no clear suspects have emerged. Antoinette's daughters, Lisa and Rachel, grew up without their mother, never knowing the full truth about what happened to her. Today, they are grown women still searching for justice. As time passes, investigators remain hopeful that someone, somewhere, knows the truth. Relationships change. Allegiances shift. Secrets become harder to keep. Detective Inspector Seamus Ryan of Bray Garda Station recently renewed the appeal, stating, "The team within An Garda Síochána firmly believe that there are people out there who have information concerning Antoinette's murder. We are appealing to them to come forward. No matter how insignificant they might think the detail is, it could help us solve this case." Authorities are particularly interested in speaking to anyone who may have seen Antoinette walking alone near O'Connell Bridge in the early hours of July 12, 1987, heard rumors or confessions over the years, knowledge of someone acting suspiciously around that time. Even after nearly 4 decades, it is never too late to do the right thing and possibly bring long-awaited justice for both Antoinette and the loved ones left behind. It was the morning of January 25, 2023, when a neighbor stepped outside his home in the quiet, snow-covered suburbs of York County, Pennsylvania. The air was crisp, the sky overcast, and everything seemed still until he glanced over at the Daub family's backyard. At first, he thought the dark shapes lying in the snow were discarded Christmas decorations. But as he looked closer, a chill ran down his spine. 3 bodies were sprawled in the yard, motionless, their limbs stiff from the cold. Within minutes, police arrived, cordoning off the scene. There was no sign of forced entry, no shattered windows, no signs of a struggle. But inside the Daub home, investigators found something far more chilling: handwritten notes explaining exactly what had happened. This wasn't a home invasion. It wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was a carefully orchestrated pact. To outsiders, the Daub family had always seemed quiet, perhaps a little reserved, but nothing out of the ordinary. James and Deborah Daub were a devoutly religious couple in their late 50s, raising their only daughter, Morgan. Morgan had been homeschooled for most of her life, a decision her parents made to shield her from what they saw as the corruption of the outside world. Religion was the cornerstone of their lives. While James was the more passive parent, Deborah was deeply entrenched in her beliefs, which grew more extreme over the years. When Morgan finally enrolled in a public high school, the transition was anything but smooth. She struggled to fit in, often feeling isolated. But she wasn't just lonely, she was suffering. From a young age, Morgan battled severe mental health issues, particularly obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, and depression. She was plagued by intrusive thoughts and paranoia, convinced that she was constantly being judged, or worse, watched. After high school, she made several attempts at finding her place in the world. She worked briefly at a Walmart, but soon quit. She had aspirations of becoming a writer and even started a YouTube channel where she rambled about various topics, her faith, her struggles, and cryptic messages about feeling trapped. The following is an excerpt of one of the videos from her channel that chillingly still remains on YouTube to this day.
This video, please do send it out. Please do. Finally God showed me. Game over, devil. I, Morgan Elizabeth Daub, York, Pennsylvania, United States of America, do hereby abdicate the throne of the United Kingdom, along with all the rights, privileges, etc. Throw off the royalty, throw off the monarchy. Somebody somewhere down the line decided they were going to be royal. Nobody was actually born royal. And then somebody else went along with it. I am royalty in Jesus. I am a royal priesthood. And they fucked with the wrong family. They really fucked with the wrong family. Give me royal authority. I rule and reign with Jesus in heavenly places. I am a king and a priest unto my God, Yahweh, Elohim El Elyon. I am not the Christ. I am not Antichrist. I am not the Christ.
But in reality, Morgan wasn't just trapped, she was spiraling. As the years passed, the Daub family became more reclusive. The COVID-19 pandemic only intensified their isolation. While much of the world slowly adapted to life post-lockdown, the Daubs withdrew further. They stopped attending church in person, cut off most social connections, and spent nearly all their time together in their home. Inside those walls, a disturbing ideology was taking shape. Deborah, convinced that the end of the world was near, became obsessed with the idea of a spiritual calling. She believed that they were being summoned, not in a metaphorical sense, but literally. According to notes later found by investigators, Deborah had come to the conclusion that Morgan would soon die. She claimed that God had revealed it to her and that she and James could not let their daughter go alone. At first, James resisted. He had always been the quieter, more reserved member of the family, but over time, Deborah and Morgan wore him down. If Morgan was truly meant to die, then perhaps it was God's will that they all go together. By early January 2023, the decision had been made. They began preparing for their deaths as if it were a routine event. They even wrote letters, final messages explaining their reasoning, almost as if they believed the world would understand. Then, on the night of January 24th, they walked into their backyard. Morgan held the gun first. Whether she volunteered or was pressured remains unknown. Standing under the cold winter sky, she raised the weapon, turned to her mother, and pulled the trigger. Deborah collapsed into the snow. Then Morgan turned the gun on her father. James had always been the reluctant one, and yet he didn't fight. He didn't run. He simply accepted his fate. With both parents lying motionless beside her, Morgan took a deep breath and ended her time on this earth. By the time the sun rose over the quiet Pennsylvania suburb, the Daub family was gone. When police entered the Daub home, they found evidence of meticulous planning. Handwritten notes outlined their decision, each of them affirming that this was their collective choice. One of Morgan's final messages was particularly haunting. "My parents and I have decided to end our lives. I am solely responsible for my decision. My mother is a willing participant. My father had some reluctance but ultimately went along with it." Despite the clarity of the notes, the case left lingering questions. Was this truly a joint decision, or was Morgan manipulated by her mother's religious extremism? Had James really agreed to die, or had he simply given up after years of being dominated by his wife's beliefs? Investigators concluded that it was indeed a murder, but the deeper psychological factors at play made it far more complex than a simple act of despair. In the weeks following the discovery, there was no large public outcry, no vigils, no widespread mourning. The Daubs had lived in near-total isolation, and in death they remained largely forgotten. Neighbors spoke about how they had seemed off, but no one ever imagined it would end this way. Morgan's former classmates, those who had once passed her in the hallways of high school, were stunned to learn what had happened. Some recalled her as the quiet girl who never quite fit in. Now she was forever known as the daughter who carried out a family pact. The Daub family's story is a tragic reminder of what can happen when unchecked mental illness, religious extremism, and deep-seated isolation collide. It's a case that leaves behind an unsettling truth. Sometimes, the most terrifying horrors aren't the ones that lurk in the shadows. They're the ones happening in plain sight, behind closed doors. If you enjoyed this deep dive into these cases, please like and subscribe for more true crime mysteries like these and more. Until next time, stay safe out there, and as always, stay curious.